Hey guys, Erroneous here with another Raid Shadow Legends video. In today's video I'm going to be going over whether or not it is appropriate for you to be pulling your shards at this time, and if I suggest for you to pull your shards for Sicia Flametongue. So let's get into it. Alright guys, so Sicia Flametongue is aesthetically pleasing. I mean, she looks amazing. As you can see, she's got the flaming wings going on, the flaming horns, the sword that's made of fire as well. I mean, her build is insane. And she also is one of the strongest HP burn explosion champions in the game. I think she's the strongest, and maybe the only. I'm not sure if she's the only HP burn explosion champion. I'm pretty sure she is, but yeah, she's crazy powerful in Spider's Den, and a lot of people do want her just because of this ability, and that is places HP burn debuff on this champion for 3 turns, then attacks all enemies. Has a 75% chance of placing HP burn debuff on all enemies for 3 turns. Grants an extra turn if HP burn debuff is placed on all enemies. So you would have to book her out to try to grant that, to get that debuff on all enemies, and then she would end up going into this ability where it attacks all enemies, has an 80% chance of placing a 25% weaken for 2 turns, and also an 80% chance of placing 60% decreased defense for 2 turns if there's at least 2 enemies under an HP burn. Now, if you pair her well with another champion who places HP burns, like Mordecai, you can also use, I think you can use Crypt King Grawl, but he's like a freeze champion, and I believe HP as well, HP burn champion, I'll double check that. Ignatius is a good champion. I do have Ignatius. He has HP burn on all enemies, and it's not resistible, so that's a really cool ability of his. So pairing her with Ignatius would be fantastic. Also pairing with Crypt King Grawl, if you have him, is huge. I do have to redo my Spider 20 to 25 team eventually, but who knows, maybe I'll pull for her. I don't know if it's really appropriate for my account at this stage to pull for something like this. Personally, I like going for the fusions, for the fragment summon events that come up, because I just like the hype of it all. It actually makes me want to play the game more when it comes to fusions and fragment summon events. So I get very excited when every 2 to 4 weeks when we have a brand new champion that comes into the game that's a legendary or an epic that you can fuse and then utilize to help boost your account. So obviously Sicia Flametongue is amazing. She also has on the A2 the Flame Eruption, which is instantly activates any HP burn debuffs on each target and decreases the duration of those HP burn debuffs by 1 turn. So that's kind of insane. And just to kind of take a look, I think in Undead Hordes, I do have Crypt King Grawl, and on his ability, he has attacks all enemies on his A2, 75% chance of placing an HP burn for 2 turns. And then if you wanted to use him with her, you could. So you could use Crypt King Grawl if you wanted to, and just place the HP burn first, and then she would lead right into the explosion. But I think that Crypt King Grawl is better when paired with people that are HP burners. So it should go something like this. HP burn champion like Mordecai, who's an epic, into Crypt King Grawl, who can CC all the targets because he places a freeze on each target for 1 turn if they're under HP burn debuff, and also extends the duration of the HP burn debuffs to 3 turns. And the extension can't be resisted at all, which is phenomenal. So that's going to allow your Sicia Flametongue to do even more damage. So that's huge. And then there's another champion too, which in the Ogren tribes I talked about, which is Ignatius. Very good champion. Very underrated champion, I would say, because maybe just not a lot of people have this champion, but as a legendary he doesn't have a lot of reviews, so that just means that he probably isn't pulled as often. Of course, I only have 1 copy of this champion. He's not booked. I would love to, actually no, sorry, he is booked for me, and I can show you in my tavern. So for me, Ignatius, I have him fully booked. So, and the reason why I have him fully booked is because of the Turn to Ash ability. So it can't be resisted, but if it's not booked, it's only a 75% chance of placing HP burn, so you could just end up not landing it at all. So I booked him out to get that 100% chance to place HP burn on all enemies for 2 turns. It can't be resisted. And then what I'm going to do is build him around Crypt King Grawl, and then also utilize another champion. And just to go over really quickly, if for some reason you guys don't have Crypt King Grawl, you can also substitute him for a champion known as Achak the Wenderin, and it's this guy right here. So Achak the Wenderin is a very strong champion for spiders, all spiders, be it spiders in Doom Tower, and of course the regular dungeon spiders. So his ability is very similar to Crypt King Grawl. His is obviously weaker as he's an epic, but every 3 turns his ability Frostfire Gale attacks all enemies, has a 70% chance of placing a freeze debuff for 1 turn on enemies whose attack is higher than their defense, and all those spiders are going to have attack that's higher than their defense. So it will place a freeze on everybody, but the chance of placing is a lot lower as compared to Crypt King Grawl. Has a 70% chance of placing an HP burn debuff for 1 turn on enemies whose defense is equal to or higher than their attack. So I actually have my Achak booked out, and right now his land rate and ability for debuff chance is at 70 plus 80 plus 90%. So in total you get 20% from books here. Now Achak does take a lot of books, and you kind of have to get lucky because you can end up landing all your books into the A1, but you really just want them here if you're just going to use Achak for simply spider running. Another cool thing about Achak is his Cannibal Might ability. For every 4 turns, places a block debuff buff on all allies for 1 turn, and a 25% strengthen buff on all allies for 2 turns, which is incredible because strengthen, as you know, mitigates 25% of the damage taken by those spiders or any champions in the entire game, or bosses for that matter. So he is a good champion. Then also he has a great passive where he heals all allies by 5% of their max HP every time an enemy under HP burn debuff gets turned. Fills the turn meter of all allies by 10% every time an enemy under a freeze debuff gets a turn. So this guy is really, really, really good in spiders. Anywhere where there's multiple enemies on the team and you've got freezes out there is insane. So it doesn't have to be his freeze. It can be anybody's freeze that's throwing it out there. And then he's just going to be increasing everybody's speed every time a person with freeze on them gets a turn. So that's massive. Another champion that you could utilize as well, I mean, of course you want to use Cold Heart. Cold Heart's massive. Let me show you Mordecai as well. I don't have my Mordecai built out personally, but because I have Ignatius. But let me just take a peek here. Mordecai is also a very good champion, pretty consistent. And let me just take him out of the vault. You also have this gentleman here. I forget his name, but I don't have him built. So let me just take a peek at Mordecai first, just to quickly go over his kit. So Mordecai is a very good champion as an epic if you pull him. On his A1, 30% chance of decreasing target's turn meter by 10%, 60% instead if the target's under HP burn. Then that does book out to a 75% chance if the Mother Spider has the HP burn. Then he has Times Undoing on his A2, has a 75% chance of decreasing the turn meters of all enemies by 15%, which is really good against those spiderlings because you want to keep those enemies at bay from attacking your Cold Hearts or any champions that you just don't want going down at the time. Fills the turn meter of all allies by 15%. Now this is kind of his bread and butter skill, Heavenly Flames, 75% chance of placing an HP burn debuff on all enemies for 2 turns, and places an increased attack buff on all allies for 3 turns, which is actually really good. It does book out to 100%, so if you get Mordecai, this land rate, if you book him out to 100%, will always land HP burn on all enemies. So Mordecai is actually an exceptional character to be using, champion to be using in Spider's Den if you have him. Build him out. Don't sleep on this champion. The next champion is Akoth the Seared. Massive champion, barely even fits on the screen. He has an A1 that just does decrease crit rate on the enemy. A2 attacks all enemies, 20% chance of placing an HP burn debuff. The chance of placing the debuff increases by 20% for each alive enemy. I don't know why it doesn't say each enemy alive, but for each alive enemy. So that just means that if you're in Spider's Den, he's going to place HP burn on basically everybody as long as he doesn't get a weak hit. So because he's attacking all enemies. And then on the A3, it looks like we have attacks all enemies, so that's another one, attack all. Has a 50% chance of increasing the cooldowns of all skills by 2 turns on enemies under HP burn debuffs. Also places a shield buff equal to 20% of this champion's max HP on all allies for 2 turns. Instantly activates this skill when this champion is revived by Rian the Conjurer. So this is actually a really good ability. It's great for helping shield your allies on Spider, especially for stage 25 if you do use this guy. But he is in Doom Tower and he's locked behind those secret rooms, so if you're a new player and you're just starting out in the game, it's going to take you a while to get this guy. His passive, 10% chance of placing a fear debuff on an enemy for 1 turn whenever they receive damage from an HP burn debuff placed on themselves. So this guy is actually really good for Spiders because he has a lot of good passives abilities where he can place a fear on those Spiderlings every time an HP burn debuff goes off, or a chance to place a fear, which then procs them, makes it so that the run is faster, because if a Spiderling has a fear and they don't take a turn, it's just going to make the run a little bit quicker because you're not going to see those animations. His aura is good, it's 25% in all battles, so you can put him as the lead as well in Spiders, whereas Mordecai, his aura is accuracy in all battles, so Mordecai is more beginner level friendly, whereas Akoth the Seared is a little bit more mid to late game friendly. So if you do pull either of them, congratulations, great champions, as well as Achak. So that's going to be it for that. Again, I'm not going to pull for Sicia. I know that Sicia is an insane champion, but I just don't think it's worth me pulling for her. I mean, it's 10 times chance. It's not... I just pulled a legendary recently on the ×4 sacred. After you pull your 4th sacred, you get the Rector Draft. So that means I'm now 3 sacreds into my pity. And if I do pull for this sacred, I may not end up getting the next fusion. So, and that fusion's coming in about a week or 2. And that's the part that's kind of challenging, right? Because it is a very good champion, but again, I'm saving for the next fusion, which the fusion could end up being really good. Now, of course, this recent fusion with Satora Rhymehide is a very good champion. He's actually an exceptional champion, so if you got him, congratulations. But again, I don't know if it's worth it pulling for Sicia Flametongue. If you're just a casual player and you just pull shards whenever you want, then absolutely go for Sicia Flametongue. But if you're a low spender, maybe go for it. If you're a high spender, obviously high spenders are going to go for it whenever they want. But again, not someone that I would personally go for at this time. And it's not 2 times. The Sacreds are 2 times this weekend, I believe. So I don't think it's worth going for her, although she is an exceptional champion. So guys, thank you so much for watching if you've watched this far. I don't recommend pulling for Sicia Flametongue if you're a free-to-play player. If you're a low-spend to high-spend player and you want to try to get Sicia Flametongue, by all means, go for it. Good luck. I mean, you don't have to pull. You could pull if you want to, and if you get lucky, hey, congratulations. But I think I'm going to hold off on this summoning event. Thanks so much for watching, and take care.